It is time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at these sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are Jonathan Liu from The Guardian and Ihsan Khan from The Daily Mail. Welcome along to you both. Let's just quickly run you through the back pages as we have them so far. Back page of The Sun reports one of the big transfer stories of the day. Gibbs-White Hart Lane, as Morgan is looking to swap Nottingham Forest for Tottenham Hotspur. Yes, Spurs have triggered his release clause, and also at the top there, Ben's bugged because there was a swarm, or rather a loveliness of ladybirds that stopped play at Lord's. Let's move to the front page of the Times sports section. Spurs close in on £60 million. Gibbs-White, and also little cyclone there on Olivia Smith, set to become the first £1 million female footballer. Also in the Telegraph sports section, we can see here Horner's £50 million payoff talks. Lawyers thrashing out terms of sack principal settlement. Rival teams like to offer top jobs after Red Bull departure. And yes, the picture of Joe Root. One to go, Joe. Yes, he is 99 not out after day one of the third test between England and India at Lord's. All right then, welcome along to Jonathan and to Ihsan. Let's have a look at Morgan Gibbs-White, shall we? It is in the back page of The Sun, and yes, Gibbs-White Hart Lane. I think it was quite an obvious headline to go for, but in any case, Thomas Frank now, with this now being a release clause that has been triggered so they can liaise and negotiate directly with the player. It does seem, Jonathan, that this is Spurs for once not moving late in the window, but moving early and backing their new head coach.
Yeah, and I think quite a surprising move. I mean, it's certainly caught a lot of people by surprise today. There's obviously a release clause that's been triggered. Personal terms will have to be negotiated. But I think one of the reasons it's caused such surprise is that, like you say, this is not generally how Spurs like to operate. And you have to conclude that the money that has been made available, first of all, for Mohamed Kudus, and now for Morgan Gibbs-White, is a result of the leeway that Spurs have managed to build up over the last 2 or 3 seasons in terms of PSR that hasn't been available to a lot of other teams. The other interesting point is where Thomas Frank is, or how Thomas Frank is going to fit in these new signings, along with, you've got Matthias Tell, you've got Kulusevski, Maddison, Brennan Johnson, Odebear, Heung-min Son. How exactly is he going to juggle all of these attacking riches, which is not a question, not a problem that Ange Postecoglou had for a lot of last season with the injury crisis that they had. In terms of Gibbs-White himself, I think it's a fantastic signing for Gibbs-White himself with in a World Cup season as he's trying to break into the international setup. But also, I think he's a really exciting signing for the Spurs if that does come through. Kudus is one of those players who, I think Kudus is obviously a player who could play anywhere across the attacking line. Gibbs-White is one of those players who can link midfield and attack more. And you wonder where his arrival kind of leaves someone like James Maddison, who plays in a similar sort of area, but is obviously less dynamic in terms of his running between the lines. So it's an exciting time for Spurs, and obviously problems for Thomas Frank to fit that all in. But I think it is a real statement of intent by Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, if both of these go through, then effectively £115 million on 2 players in their mid-20s with Premier League experience. Let's go to the back page of The Mirror on this story. And guess what? They've gone for the same headline as The Sun, Gibbs-White Hart Lane. What about that then, Ihsan, in terms of the value here? 60 million, 55 million for Gibbs-White and Kudus respectively. How do you see it?
Well, I think with Gibbs-White, the fact that Manchester City were in for him not so long ago just shows you the quality he has. And in terms of Thomas Frank, he must be delighted with Ange Postecoglou. He obviously, the previous season, he had to bank with young players like Bergvall, Archie Gray, and now Thomas Frank entered the job and over £100 million being spent. So for him, he must be delighted with 2 players that have got proven Premier League experience who will have surely been courted by other clubs. With Gibbs-White, he obviously brings leadership qualities too. As I say, the City interesting with Kudus. We have to remember when he first joined the Premier League, he hit the ground running absolutely. Last season there was a bit of a drop off in terms of goals and assists, but at West Ham that could have been helped because of the changes in manager. But with Kudus, there's definitely talent there, and he's only, I think, 24, so there's still a lot more to come from him, and it just shows you the intent that Daniel Levy and Spurs are showing ahead of the new season. Finished 17th, but with having Champions League football next season, the money that brings in, that's obviously helped with this. Ange Postecoglou, he must be on holiday somewhere grinding his teeth. He never saw any of this money and such signings when in his tenure. Obviously, that was hampered by injuries too. But for Frank, it's a real promising coup ahead of what will be a season where Spurs will want to obviously do much better in the league, but also make a mark in the Champions League too.
Jonathan, I look at the rest of the business they've done. Kota Takai, the 20-year-old defender from Kawasaki Frontale, for 5 million. Matisse Tell arriving permanently, 30 million. Kevin Danso, 12 million. Where else do Tottenham now need to strengthen, do you think?
Well, I would say they've signed Danso permanently, but I still think they're a little bit light in the centre of defence because, well, it's one of those questions that's kind of contingent, because I would say they probably still need a signing at the base of midfield. But if they think that Archie Gray is, who obviously played a lot of last season at central defence, but midfield is his best position. If they think Gray and Bergvall are a viable pairing at the base of midfield, then, along with, I guess, Basuma and Bentancur, then they may well have enough covered there. If they think Gray is probably going to have another transitional season, he's one of those players that you need to integrate into the first team a little bit more, then you may also need some cover in that area. But I think they also need a little bit of cover in defence as well, because we saw that they were actually stretched so thin in so many different positions. It was the fact that it wasn't just an injury crisis; it was an injury crisis that had knock-on effects all across the team. It was like a pane of broken glass, because that system, once you took 7 or 8 players out of it, it just literally couldn't function.
When you look at where these players have left to join Tottenham, Ihsan, how much of a loss is it, and how hard will they be to replace? Mohamed Kudus at West Ham, that one's gone through, and Gibbs-White at Forest, which we expect now to go through.
Well, with Forest, of course, they've lost Gibbs-White, and they've obviously Elanga looking likely to go to Newcastle, which for Forest, that's going to be a major rebuild there. 2 key players with Kudus, of course, with that money, they're going to try and use that to rebuild the squad. But even then, players like Kudus, who have proven themselves in the Premier League, they're not easy to replace. And West Ham, in terms of attraction right now, the players that they're going to lure to the club, it's going to be difficult to get the players that they're after of that kind of quality, who will be willing to move and not really have that prospect of, for example, Champions League football like they have with Spurs. So both West Ham and Forest, they've got rebuilds to be done there. In terms of the money, it's on both sides. It's not extraordinary amounts, but it's not pitching size, so they can work with that money. But as I say, Premier League proven players, to replace them, it's never easy. And both clubs do have a task on their hands ahead of the season.
Let's move on to Arsenal. They've effectively announced 2 signings today. Well, at least one of them's gone through. That's Christian Norgard from Brentford. But more significantly, and in your paper, Jonathan, this is one of your lead stories, well, Arsenal have agreed a fee with Liverpool to sign Canadian international forward Olivia Smith for what would be the first ever 7-figure fee in terms of British pounds. So it would be a new world record fee should this one go through. How significant a moment do you think this is?
I think it's very significant for Arsenal. I think in terms of the game itself, I think it's going to be one of those markers that is broken. It might even be broken this transfer window, to be honest. The way that transfer fees in the women's game are going for Arsenal, I think it's a smart move in 2 respects. First of all, because Olivia Smith has Premier League experience. Had a great debut season with Liverpool, can play across the forward line, is versatile, can get into the game even when she's not scoring goals, but also has a kind of international profile and a pretty high ceiling. And for Arsenal, who are trying, I think, they're trying to build on that Champions League success, but they also are aware that in Stina Black-Stenius and Beth Mead and Caitlin Ford, you have players who are either 29 or 30, and essentially they are going to have to move on in the next couple of years. So that's the signing of Chloe Kelly and the signing of Smith. I think that is a real statement for a club that, for all it was a fantastic win in Lisbon, but I think a lot of Arsenal fans for the last 2 or 3 seasons have been wondering, what is the ambition of this team? How are we going to close the gap to Chelsea? They've seen Chelsea streaking ahead in the WSL. They've seen them signing Naomi Girma, signing the world's greatest players, and really sort of investing, like front loading their investment in the women's team. And Arsenal fans are thinking, well, we attract the biggest crowds in the women's game. We are probably the biggest brand in women's football, in women's club football. Where is the ambition and the signings to match that? And I think, just in the first few weeks of the transfer window, we've got our answer there.
Yeah, 7 league goals. Ihsan helped Liverpool reach the FA Cup semi-finals. This in Kit Shepherd's piece in the Times. 5'3", not imposing, Kit says, but very difficult to dispossess and comfortable with physicality. Is she a player that we can get excited about with that? That kind of, when you describe her like that, you can see, that defences might get really frustrated trying to get the ball off her, trying to, hack her down, giving away penalties, giving away free kicks. This is someone who can really create and be dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. She's definitely got a lot of talent. She wouldn't be going for that price if she didn't. But more widely on the women's game, this is just a matter of time before the £1 million mark would have been struck. Ever since, obviously, the England women's team won the Euros in 2022. The women's game has just gone from strength to strength. Looking domestically at Arsenal itself, they've really invested in the women's game. And for example, next season, I think 11 women's Super League games are going to be played at Emirates for the first time. They're usually played at Boreham Wood, and they wouldn't play them at the Emirates if they didn't think they'd get the right revenue or fill enough seats. So it just shows you the popularity and interest in the women's game today, which is only going to grow further and further. But yeah, fair play to for Arsenal for investing in the way in general, just in terms of overall with the women's game. They've really got in that early, and it just shows you the fruits of it. If you back the women's game, it just shows the potential it's got there, and it's only going to grow further.
Yeah, and long may it continue. OK, Jonathan, Ihsan, thank you for the moment. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at more of the stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Telegraph. 1 to go, Joe. Joe Root, 99 not out at the end of day 1 of the third tests between England and India. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you at home. Welcome back to Jonathan New from The Guardian and Isan Khan from the Daily Mail. So we're going to talk cricket now, guys. And at Lord's, third test getting underway. Series nicely poised, one apiece. And actually this match, nicely poised. England 251 for 4, having chosen to bat after winning the toss. And at the back page of The Sun, despite all that, they focus on Ben Stokes being bugged by ladybirds. Yes, apparently the collective now, I did not know this, for ladybirds is a loveliness, which is rather lovely. But in any case, it was a really sort of varied day in terms of what we saw on the field of play. Not just that swarm of insects, but also the performance of Joe Root to be 99 not out at the end of play. Jonathan, I mean, where does this rank in terms of, you know, the innings that he's had to play? He hasn't really been particularly in form in this series, just the context overall.
Well, yes, but you know, Joe Root is never more than, you know, a couple of innings away from finding form. I think he showed that here. It wasn't his most fluid innings. I don't think it was the sort of day on which anybody could score freely. But he does love Lords. I think he knows the surface better than anyone. It's a particularly slow Lords track. It looks like for this test, and he just has, you know, he has so much time to play his shots. He may not necessarily be able to score quickly, but it's really hard to shift him once he's set. And I think, you know, it was another of those innings that just oozed class. I think he's got more runs than anyone else at Lords. He's got more runs against India than anyone else now. And I think Root is one of those interesting cases with Bazball where I think where it freed him up a lot mentally. I don't think we saw a lot of Joe Root's best cricket in the first couple of years of what we call Bazball. It is ultimately about when Joe Root plays his natural game and bats at the tempo that he likes, that he finds comfortable, and reads the situation as he sees fit. He is one of the greatest batsmen England have ever had. When he's forced to kind of to almost play zany attacking cricket for the team ethos, you know, he will do it because he's Joe Root, but it doesn't get the best out of him. I think today was the best of Joe Root.
Let's have a look at the back page of Jonathan's paper, The Guardian. So Root the Rock stuck on 99. A batter 1 run shy of 8th Lord's century as England knuckled down 251 for 4. Isan, I mean, this record that Jonathan mentions at Lord's, I mean, I think all the more admirable given that, you know, this is not a ground that England have traditionally been super strong at. Used to be Edgbaston. Headingley, we've seen great England wins, but Lord's not the case. So he's had to kind of grind in difficult circumstances on many occasions at Lord's, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He's sometimes been the man to get England out of a lot of tricky situations. I think from today's play, it's one of the slowest run rates England have had since the Bazball started under Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes, which was it's refreshing to see because we've seen in the past where they've gone gung-ho in scenarios where they really shouldn't have had, and they've shot themselves in their own foot on occasion. So it was good to see that other side of the game, which they have got in their locker. It doesn't come out enough sometimes when the scenario presents itself, but today it very much did. And the game is pretty much in the bag. I know it's only day one, but if they lost a few more wickets, India could have really capitalised. Because at one point, Reddy got 2 wickets in 1 over, which look to potentially steer the ship well in India's favour. So England have done well to come back. Of course, the main concern today and for the rest of this test series is that potential injury to Ben Stokes. He is not someone to ever show he's in pain or discomfort. So the fact that he was down on the floor with the physios out there shows that, yeah, it's he was in some pain. So England can only hope that it's a minor setback and he's either back fully fit for this test or at least ready for the next one. Because if he's somehow out in this series, that'll be a monumental blow for England.
Yeah, in fact, the picture on the back page of the Eye is of Ben Stokes, grimacing in some discomfort. There with one of the England backroom staff having taken a break because of this groin injury. England hopeful that Stokes' injury is nothing serious. Captain pulled up with groin problem in evening session. But how critical a blow could this be, Jonathan, given that, you know, yes, he's come back from injury, but he has been a reliable wicket taker and just more of his aura, his leadership of this team?
Well, I think we'll have to wait and see how serious it is. It could go either way, really. To be honest, Stokes has played some of his greatest innings on pretty much on one leg. He's bowled some of his greatest spells through injury, through adversity. As long as it's not a long-term issue, one of the things that's going to compound over the summer, it could actually fire him up a little bit.
Let's switch focus, shall we, to rugby union. So inside pages of the Telegraph Sports section talking about Owen Farrell and him being named in the squad for the final warm-up game before the Test series against the Wallabies for the British and Irish Lions. He'll be wearing 23 on his bat for the first time on the international stage because he is on the bench as one of the replacements. Jonathan, does it feel like this is now, a case of, as the headline suggests, a matter of when, not if, he plays for the Lions? Not necessarily, it could be in this first test against Australia, but definitely over the course of the series.
Yeah, I think he'll make an appearance at some stage, and I think this goes back to I wouldn't call it inexperience because there's so much experience in Test caps across that party, but I think in the back line in particular. The Aussies they're obviously going to target Finn Smith. They're going to target Marcus Smith. They're going to target Finn Russell. And I think you want someone who's been there, who has the calmness and the experience of someone like Owen Farrell. And if he can prove his fitness, because he has been a little bit ring rusty. The reports from training are supposedly pretty good. So, and then you basically have a selection decision to make at 12. It will be at 12, I think. Between Tripolotu and Bundiaki, who starts, but because of Farrell's versatility as a 10, as a 12, because of what he brings in terms of his experience, his leadership, his nous, his ability to read a game and a match situation, I think he's a very viable option to come off the bench, if not in the first test, then at some point during the series.
Let's talk a little bit about a piece that you've written, Ihsan, for the Mail on Gabriel Ainser. I'm sure that football fans of a certain vintage might remember when he played in England, but being brought in by Mikel Arteta. Just unpack this piece for us if you can.
Yeah, so he officially announced this week to join Arsenal as the assistant coach. It's an interesting one in many ways. So he obviously, as a player, he won league titles with Man United, Marseille, and Real Madrid too. But he's always had that combustible personality, never one to back down in confrontation, and very much on the front foot. In terms of his managerial career, he's managed 5 sides in Argentina. A source in Argentina told me that at his most recent club, Newell Old Boys in Argentina. In fact, he weighed some of the players twice a day, and he would send them instructions on WhatsApp, and if they had forgot them or not followed orders, he'd punish them in training for forgetting instructions. So this is someone who, he does not mess around. So how that will translate to the Arsenal superstars, of course, he's not in charge of Arsenal, but he'll be around the team as Arteta's right-hand man. It's an interesting dynamic, of course, with Arteta. He's known Heinze from his days at PSG. I think when Arteta's a teenager on loan at Paris Saint-Germain, Heinze was one of his inspirations. They both spoke Spanish, and he looked after him in a way. So it's they have that connection from there. And over the years, he's been a confidant to Arteta. In recent years, so he has that trust in him in that capacity. So how that adapts to the Arsenal superstars remains to be seen. But what is clear is that he's a passionate man, like Arteta, crazy on details, and he'll be a force of nature. He'll bring that passion, and overall, it's an interesting recipe altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. Very briefly, Jonathan, about 30 seconds or so. Giovanni van Bronckhorst set to join Arne Slot's coaching team at Liverpool. We're seeing now the sort of Premier League stars of a certain vintage coming back. What will Ainser add? What does Van Bronckhorst add? How can they improve the picture?
Well, I mean, they have played in a very different era of football, but obviously what they bring is that star quality. They have a name recognition for players brought up on a Premier League in a certain era, they have that star quality. And I think if you're trying to communicate with young players, if you're trying to get your messages across, that's an underrated factor. And I like also, by the way, that Arteta's kind of mixing up his coaching staff. It's a Guardiola trait. It's also something that Alex Ferguson used to do as well. You're never kind of satisfied, always looking for that extra edge. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, we're going to leave it there, guys. Thank you very much indeed for your insights tonight, Jonathan and Ihsan. If you missed any of the show, another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30. The show also available as a podcast. Download Back Pages on Apple